Welcome to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we bring in entrepreneurs who have created online businesses and improved their lifestyles. Here's your host, Rohit Malhotra.
Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Life Self-Mastery, and today I'm excited to have Lindsay Pedersen, who is a brand strategist with a scientific and growth-oriented approach to brand building. She has advised companies from startups to national corporations, including Starbucks, T-Mobile, IMDb, and Coinstar. Her background as a P&L owner and Clorox fostered in Lindsay a deep appreciation for the executive's charge, including the company's value. There she led mature billion-dollar businesses and newly launched categories from Clorox bleach to Armor, all to Brita. In each case, she was solely responsible for increasing the business's value. Lindsay runs Ironclad Brand Strategy, and she's recently launched a best-selling book, which is called Forging An Ironclad Brand. Welcome to the show, Lindsay.
Having me, Rohit.
Awesome. So, you've been a brand strategist for such a long time, and you've been a P&L owner at Clorox. So how did you get your interest into brand strategy?
Yeah. So when I was a brand manager at Clorox, and Clorox is most people know Clorox for Clorox bleach, but it's a house of brands that has about 100 brands, businesses across a lot of categories: Casey Masterpiece barbecue sauce, and Kingsford charcoal, and Brita water filters, and Glad trash bags. Right. So there's a broad range of brands, kind of in the school of Procter and Gamble, or General Mills, or Nestle, or Johnson and Johnson, and with that model, the brand manager is the CEO of the business. So, for example, I was the brand manager of Clorox Bleach Pen. And so I owned the P&L, and my charge was to grow the business profitably. And when you're in a category that's full of largely undifferentiated products, which is often the case in consumer packaged goods, brand is the primary source of differentiation. And so if you want to have a thriving business when you're in a category like that, you really have to be dialed in with your brand. You need it to be distinctive and resonant with your customer, and something that is sharp edge so that people remember it and tell their friends about it. So in that environment, you kind of you have to make it a science, because it's the way that you can make your business succeed. And when I was in that role, that was probably my favorite part of the role, was identifying and crystallizing the North Star, the brand strategy. And when I did that, it was so liberating as the business owner to have that, because it provided these guardrails and guidance for decision making, and enabled us to punch above our weight, because we had such a singular, crystal clear brand promise that we could message and that we could innovate against. So I just loved that. And so that was the environment where I learned the science of building a brand strategy. And then I left to start my own consulting firm doing this for other businesses. And just because I enjoyed it so much, and I saw, I remembered how relieved and free I felt when I was a leader and I had this tool. And I saw so many businesses and leaders in particular who did not have that tool, and even misunderstood what the tool was, thought that brand was a logo, or a tagline, or TV advertising. So right. I have a lot of heart for demystifying it and just making it this tool that leaders in any vertical can use to guide their business.
Got it. And I was reading your book, and as mentioning before the call, that we've got a lot of listeners, who either in a 9 to 5 job, or they're looking into build their hustle. So what the podcast is too short time frame to talk about. But what does a brand mean? Would it is it a combination of a name, a logo, color? What do you think would a brand mean to you?
Yeah, yes. Thanks for asking that, because it really is it's so important to start with this understanding of what it is. So a brand is the meaning that you stand for in the mind of your audience. It's the thing it's the idea that you own to your customer. And it comes through in everything that customer experiences of your business, from the visual, what's the name of your business, what's the logo and the color and the visual identity, for sure. But it also comes through in what's their product experience, and how do they feel having interacted with your product, and what's the personality and tone of your business. All of those things together, the sum total of all of those experience, that's what sets that meaning in the mind of your customer. So it's very common, especially in high tech environments, even consumer internet companies. It's common to think that brand is equal to the visual identity, the logo, the colors. And that's true. That is an expression of the brand. Hopefully, it's a visual expression that is aligned with the meaning that you want to stand for. But it's a mistake to think that that's all that brand is, because a consumer is smarter than that. The consumer is going to give you credit for the thing, not just the thing, the way that you show up visually, but the value that they're getting from choosing you, from choosing to be your customer. Those are the things that really establish and reinforce the meaning in their head. So yes, like those things that you mentioned are part of brand, but they don't equal brand. It's kind of like taking a person and saying that person is equal to the clothes that she's wearing. Those clothes, hopefully they kind of reflect what she's like, but she is not her clothes.
Correct. And what do you think is the first step in brand building strategy?
Yes. So the very first, most fundamental question that leaders, whether this is a very, tiny burgeoning startup to, a side hustle, or whether it's a huge company, the very first question is, who are you serving? Who is this person? What is the theme that ties together the people that you want to serve, who you are going to bring disproportionate value? Who are these people? What are they like? What is the problem that they're experiencing that you are going to come in and help solve? And what's it like to have that problem? That's the very first step to orient the rest of what you're going to create for this audience, for this customer. If you don't have that, then the rest of what you do is going to feel kind of diluted. It's not going to be, it's going to be difficult to create something that's precise, to create a brand meaning that is precise, if you aren't super curious and honest with yourself about who is this person that you're serving and what's their state, what's their unmet need. So that's the first thing. And funny enough, it's the thing that I think people either skip or rush through when they're identifying what's their brand meaning going to be. But in order to know what your brand meaning is going to be, you need to know who you are going to mean something to. And then you can make decisions across your business that optimize for that person, as opposed to just kind of willy-nilly making decisions for a generic audience.
Got it. And, you've been into consumer goods for such a long time. Do you think Amazon has made it difficult for brands to be relevant in these times?
This is a question that I see a lot, which is what is the role of brand, especially for a consumer business
Right.
that maybe even sells on Amazon. What's the role of brand in that realm? And what I say is, if you're in an environment that increasingly puts price pressure on you and your peers in that realm, it's even more important to stand for something that has nothing to do with price. So it's the same idea, but the importance of it is now actually more urgent because consumers have so much more information, whether it's reviews that they find on Amazon, in other categories as well, like TripAdvisor. If you're in the travel category, you have much more access as a consumer to information that you had before. All the more reason to be crystal clear about what it is that makes you both meaningful to your customer and distinctive from the rest of the pack. So it's more important now. It's like when there is more pressure put on things, kind of commoditizing a category, it's even more important to find a way to not be a commodity. And brand is the best way that I know to create that enduring and specific competitive advantage. The other thing, and this is maybe kind of a broader part of your question, is in a world, so take away Amazon for a minute, just the information overload of anybody who, which is most adults now who have a smartphone and they're on screens a lot of the time, and they are bombarded with stimuli, with messages.
Right.
And in a world where attention is scarce and becoming even more scarce, the way that you stand out is by being specific, by not being generic or bland or general, because the way that you capture a human being's attention is by bringing them something that's distinctive and that means something to them. So the bar is just higher now. It's actually just higher stakes to have a brand that's both resonant with customers and distinctive from the rest of the category.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that you got to be specific and you got to target to the right audience. We have a lot of listeners who are either building an FBA business or building an e-commerce business. So, do you think for startups or for smaller companies, should they focus more on brand positioning or customer acquisition?
Yes, both and.
Yeah.
So and actually I want to parse this out a little bit, because even the question itself presupposes that it's binary, that you're choosing between brand and customer acquisition. So again, kind of back to the meaning of brand, your brand strategy. So your brand is what you stand for in the mind of your audience. Your brand strategy is the deliberate exercise of defining what that meaning should be. So that's a one-time thing that you do as a business. Ideally, you do it one time. If you do it right, you don't have to do it a whole lot. That's not a marketing spend. So you don't allocate resources against your brand strategy. What you do allocate resources against, and where there does become a bit of a trade-off with customer acquisition tactics, is once you're spending money on marketing, do you spend it on bottom of the funnel, capturing customers, or do you spend it on top of the funnel, generating brand awareness? And I stick by the idea that brand awareness tactics they're leads too. It's just that they're longer lead time leads, right? Whereas an email marketing tactic is going to ideally sell customers right away.
Got it. Yeah. So once people once somebody's trying to build a brand, be it a B2C or B2B brand. Do you think the brand positioning is same for each of these businesses?
You mean like depending on whether it's a small business or a large business, or depending on what type of
What?
business
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
in?
So
If your business is serving human beings,
yeah.
then you need a brand strategy. If your business is serving robots, then I'm not sure how much a brand strategy will help you. But the difference between B2B and B2C when it comes to brand is largely overstated, because whether you're serving, Sally, who is a mom purchasing a soccer ball for her kids as a consumer, or whether you're serving Sally, who's the head of human resources at a given company, and she's making a B2B decision for her company, you're still serving Sally. She's still a person, and she has things that keep her up at night. She has things that cause her pain and joy, and she has rational needs and she has emotional needs. When the B2B companies that recognize that are the ones that stand out. When B2B companies think, oh, we're B2B, so we don't need a brand, they're not recognizing the humanity of their customer. So now, there are lots of ways that it becomes different after you have a brand strategy. The marketing organization for B2B is going to look really different from the marketing organization for B2C. It's going to be much more sales focused. The tactics will be different. The org structure, the budget, a lot of things are going to be quite different. But the definition of what your business brings to your customer is still, it's important regardless of what category you're in, whether you're B2B or B2C. If anything, the B2B companies are the ones with the most to gain, because so few B2B companies recognize this and dismiss brand as something that's fluffy, that is not necessary for their world. So I encourage B2B companies to embrace this, because it can thinking about brand in this holistic way can itself become a competitive advantage.
Got it. And do you have any favorite B2B companies who've done their brand positioning in the right way?
I love that there aren't as many as B2C companies, but if you think of like I can think of a few. If you think of a B2B brand that you feel some affinity for, they probably have done this. They have either overtly or implicitly defined their brand strategy. So for me personally, Slack
Yeah.
is just a great, really a brand that I feel like I have a relationship with, just like I have a relationship with a person. Slack is much more than technology to me. Salesforce.com, same thing. To a lesser extent, some of the Microsoft, like now Microsoft Teams is something I use. Zoom, which you and I are using right now, is a B2B purchase for my business. And I have a lot of affinity and loyalty to Zoom. So these are all companies that have been very deliberate about who it is they want to serve and what they uniquely bring to that person. And I think that's the reason that I personally like them. This is me talking as a customer of those companies. But I think that listeners can all think, okay, as a business, what are purchases or what are brands that we work with? And if you have a good feeling about them that goes beyond the price that you pay them, that they have some brand equity for you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Zoom and Microsoft are some of my favorite, B2B brands. Lindsay, let's talk about the book that you've written, which is Forging an Ironclad Brand. So what made you write the book, and who's the book for?
Yes. I kept having the same conversation over and over with leaders who thought that kind of had a hunch that brand was important, but felt a little bit, felt like it was kind of squishy or kind of a little bit shrouded in mystique. And I had a lot of heart for deconstructing it for them to see, actually, this is something that has a huge amount of utility for you as a leader, as you're making decisions to grow your business, to make your business one that will thrive for years and years to come. And it came to the point where I was having this conversation so often that it felt necessary for me personally to put it into either, well, it started with blog posts and then it became a book, because I think that this idea that brand is a leader's most trustworthy tool in growing their business. I think it is so useful, and it's so broadly dismissed outside of consumer packaged goods. So I just had this bee in my bonnet and decided I couldn't not write this book.
Very interesting. I've read your book, and it's been very well written. But in the book, you talk about the 9 criteria for ironclad brand strategy. So can you tell us about what is the criteria about?
Sure, and this is stepping back. One of the I used the word squishy a minute ago.
Uh-huh.
One of the things that I heard from leaders that I was working with is, we leaders, especially, if you're a P&L owner, if you're a CEO, if you're a general manager, if you're a founder, it feels like we just don't really have time for something that's squishy, and it makes us uncomfortable. And what I kept noticing as I was studying brands is the most value creating brands, the ones that best differentiate their business from the rest of the category, they actually share these pretty hard criteria. It's not squishy. So the components of a brand that I call it an ironclad brand, the components of an ironclad brand, which is one that creates outsized value for the company, are something that I started to codify. So I identified 9 qualities that ironclad brands all possess. And I'll share with you the first 2, just so I don't eat up a lot of your time. The first criterion of an ironclad brand is that it's big. I use the word big. It has to be a big promise. So the need that you're solving for your customer should be a significant one. You don't want to build your business around solving a need that's not very consequential to your audience. So number 1, it should be a big promise. You should occupy a big space in the mind of your audience. But number 2 is that it should also be narrow. So it should be big enough to matter. That's number 1, but it should also be narrow enough that you can own it, where you are the only one who can deliver on this promise. So a lot of kind of poor brands stem from not adhering to these first 2 criteria for the ironclad brand. They either don't go after something big and meaningful, or they do, but they don't have a narrow, specific point of view on solving that problem. And then they become too general, and it's just like, customers don't pay attention to them because they're not claiming something specific. So I would start with that, come up with something big, but also ensure that it's narrow enough where you can dominate.
Got it. And I want to talk about storytelling for a brand, especially for the Gen Zs and millennials who have who may not buy the same products which baby boomers or the previous generation would buy. So how important is storytelling for the new set of generations who are going to come over and buy the sort of products they want to buy?
Story is wildly important, and story actually is it's as ancient as Homo sapiens are. It actually is the tool for communication that has made our species survive.
Yeah.
It's why we have been, even though our competitor human species were larger than we were, because we could tell stories, we were able to persuade large groups of people to collaborate with us, and it helped us to survive. So we're hardwired to embrace story. And the thing about story when it comes to communication is that it when you tell a story about your business, or you use story to convey the meaning of your business, it doesn't invite debate. So if you talk about the facts of your product, like the features of your product, your audience is like they're in their like prefrontal cortex kind of thinking, yeah, but do I need that? Or yeah. But if you tell a story about why you came up with this business, or the person who is sort of like the poster child for enjoying the offering that you create, it lights up their brain in a different way that makes them receptive to what you're saying. And so people, I mean, I don't know how generational this really is. I actually think that we have always embraced story, and that it's just this underutilized tool, particularly among business leaders who are product driven. So they've created this product that they're so proud of. You know, they're so proud of the features and all of the attributes of their product, but they forget that their audience is not just as enamored with their product as they are. Audiences kind of, you know, we humans, we're enamored with ourselves. So when you use story as sort of a doorway in to create magnetism for your product, you just are going to be more successful. So I really encourage leaders to think of that as a way to just as a format for communicating, and your brand strategy in a way it's almost like a super story. It's the overarching story of your business. It's the character, it's the problem that you solve, and it's the way that you solve that problem. All of that is like a template for all of the stories that you'll tell as a leader.
Got it. And so let's quickly do the top three. What's your favorite business book other than the book that you've written?
Oh, yes. My favorite business book, probably the one that I most recommend, is called Different, and it's by Young Me Moon. And it is just, I've reread it several times. It came out probably 6-7 years ago. It's kind of goes back to the first principles of how are you going to create something that isn't just one of the pack, that's truly different from everything else. And it's just beautifully written and inspiring. So I encourage listeners to read Different by Young Me Moon.
Got it. I'll put that in the show notes. And if you could go back in time when you started your consulting business, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done anything differently?
Yeah, so many things, Rohit. I think that if I could give my younger self advice, career advice in general, and also entrepreneurial advice, it's don't underestimate the importance of mindset, of the importance of your own state of mind, and kind of like the importance of kind of stepping into your own authority and expertise and owning it. I used to think that there was somebody like a more mature, more wise person who knew all the answers to everything. And now I realize that all leaders have their own, have insecurities and have things that they feel uncertain about. And it's not like you're alone when you feel that way. And that has been really helpful to me. And to, I know a lot of my clients too, is like, just know that like nobody has it figured out. We're all trying to do this, and you have as much right to try to solve this as anyone.
Got it. And do you have any favorite online tool, for example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom?
I use Asana, the project planning tool. I use that all the time, and I love it. Everybody on my team uses it, and it's super clean. It's like seamless to set up. It wasn't a pain to get started, and it's so much easier to follow up with people, and it takes a lot of the onus off of email as a team communication tool. I like it. I know that in some ways, like some people use Slack in the way that we use Asana, but Slack becomes a little bit like, there's a tendency for Slack to create a lot of like noise during the day. So now I'm really liking Asana.
Absolutely. Asana is also one of my favorite tools. Lindsay, what is the best way people can buy your book, Forging an Ironclad Brand?
Yeah, so the book is available on Amazon. It's available on IndieBound, all of the usual suspects.
Right.
It's called Forging an Ironclad Brand, A Leader's Guide. And if listeners are interested, I have a free giveaway on my business's website. So my business's website is ironcladbrandstrategy.com. And I offer a workbook that is adapted from the book, Forging an Ironclad Brand. And the workbook serves as a supplement to the book. It's this step-by-step workbook guide of the method that I use to build a brand strategy and that I unveil in the book. So you can find that at ironcladbrandstrategy.com.
Okay, we'll also put that in the show notes. And what are the best way people can reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Lindsay Pedersen, and Pedersen is Pedersen. So I would love for folks to follow on LinkedIn, Twitter. I also have an email newsletter that I send out once a month, and you can register for that on my business's website, ironcladbrandstrategy.com, or you can LinkedIn message me and I'll put you on that list. And I use that every month. I try to talk about a provocative topic in brand and leadership that just goes out to folks who've registered every month or so.
Right. Lindsay, thank you so much for coming onto the show, and best of luck for your new book.
Thank you. It's been really fun.
Thanks for listening to the Life Self-Mastery Podcast, where we teach you how to start and grow your online business. For more information, visit Rohit's blog at www.lifeselfmastery.com.